Hi folks, thanks very much for joining me for this week's stillwater tutorial. This one's for the competition boys really. It's a competition legal black booby. It's got a little hidden green hot spot underneath the booby eyes. And without further ado, let's get into it. In the vise then is a Hanak H250 barbless hook. This one's at size 8, which fits within the competition gauge. It's on a bronze hook, and as you can see it has quite a wide gape, which is really important for this pattern, and that's why I like the 250 for my boobies. Needle sharp long point, which is ideal for this kind of fly. So the thread I'm going to be using today is the Veevus. It's the F01. It's at 6/0, and as you can see it's a black thread. First thing I'm going to do is get some wax onto my thread and then rub my hands through it just to get rid of the excess. I'm going to catch in just behind the eye, and I'm going to run a bed of thread all the way down to approximately where a barb would be on a barbed hook, like the Kamazan 175, or as we used to tie in the old days. Before I went completely barbless, I would use a Kamazan B160 for my boobies, and again the reason for that was because of the gape size of the hook. So first thing I'm going to do is add my tailing feathers, and I'm using some of the Comp Candy Blackjack Marabou, and I've got one off here, and the measurement I use for my Marabou is from my thumbnail to my knuckle for tailing feathers. And so I'm just going to grab that. Now once I've peeled that off, I can put a little twist in the Marabou. It will just help me when I come to tie it on, get rid of the waste. Now I'm going to come back up the fly in open turns to approximately 3/4 of the way up the shank of the hook. Now I've left myself a good 1/4 of an inch there, and what do I mean by a good 1/4 of an inch? It's probably slightly bigger than 1/4 of an inch, is what I mean, because I need plenty of room at the front with this particular pattern, because I'm going to be using, as you've seen in the introduction, the booby eyes are actually quite big, and there's a reason for that, and I'll explain how I fish it further down the line in the video. Now come in with your thumb and forefinger of your right hand and just snip away, pinch away, sorry, don't snip, don't ever cut Marabou, it looks terrible, always pinch. So I've got that in place, and what I'm going to do next is I've got a little bit of silver wire here. This is a Veniard's number 27, I believe. It's just one I've got lying around my vise, and I'm going to catch that in from the top and bring it all the way to the butt of the fly, well, the fly's body should I say. And once I've got that into position, I can then bring my body material over. So what I've got for a body material is I'm going to use some peacock herl, and this one's been dyed black. I don't know how well you can see that, but it certainly has been dyed black. So the weakest part on the peacock is the tip, so just make sure you've pulled any really brittle fibres from the tip, and then catch that in on the body, bring it all the way up. Now I'm going to pause at this point because I just want to explain something. Because I'm doing the video, I have added this silver rib for effect really, and also its main purpose is to protect the brittle peacock herl fibres. What I would usually do with this pattern is add some super glue to the material as you see it, and then simply wrap my peacock herl round until I got to my thread, and that would be ample protection while fishing. But as I'm doing the video, I thought I would just put a little rib on it, but generally I don't bother. But it just looks a little better for the camera, so that's why I've done it. I'm just slowly bringing my peacock herl up. You can't be too quick with this because it is a very delicate material and you don't want it snapping up as you're halfway back So bring that up and then secure it in with a couple of turns of your thread. Pull it back, a couple of turns in front, and then you can come in with your scissors and just remove that. Now, generally, if you want your rib to stand out, you would go in the opposite direction to the way you wound your material, but I want it to sort of melt away. It's only there for protection, so I'm going to bring it up the same way as the peacock herald came. Once I've got it up near the head, I can catch that in. Keeping tension on your thread, you can wind away your wire. And just to make life a little bit easier at this point, I'm going to wet my thumb and forefinger and just slick that back. Bring my thread back to where I want it. And next I'm going to add in my cheeks. Now I'm going to use jungle cock cheeks. I've just got a natural jungle cock cape here, and I've selected quite a big feather, and the reason for that is I'm nearly out of little feathers. But the big feather's got a natural split in it. If it doesn't have the natural split that you see here, then you can simply get your scissors and put one in. And what you want to do is dress it up to the hook, lay it on top, pull it round, and this just encourage the split to go a little bit further. I'm going to just try and pinch that in with a couple of turns. I'm going to open my vise up to just check on your side. It's not sitting right, so I'm going to come back. You can't get it right first time every time. So if you're not happy, don't be afraid to undo your thread and just come back to get that sitting just how you want it. Another couple of turns, check again, and that's a bit better. I like that. I had too much of the yellow showing, and the reason for that is I'm using quite a big feather because my other ones are jiggered. I've used them all on dial backs actually, but never mind. Remove your waist carefully, and then just for good measure, get a little bit of wax onto your thread, and you can tidy up that front section. Now make sure that you have got that jungle cock exactly where you want it at this stage, because after this it becomes increasingly difficult to make any adjustments, if you know what I mean. So next we're going to add in our overwing. Again, it's just the Jack Black Marabou, and it's the same measurement as I took for the tail. Fairly sparse. I don't hold the big thick wings on this particular pattern. I've just snipped away the waist, damped down the ends with my fingers, tidy it up once more, dress it up to the hook, and catch that in. Now, make sure it's caught in firmly. There's nothing worse than tying on a pattern and then you're pulling at it to just check that you've tied it onto the tippet and the wing just comes away. That's a very, very frustrating thing, especially when it's the only one in your box. Okay, I'm going to lick the thumb and forefinger on my left hand and just slick all that back. Now that just makes life a little bit easier for me to work on the booby eyes. Now I have my little tic tac, as I like to call them, here. If you haven't seen how I do this, I'll stick a little Instabar thing up there directing you to another video on how I create my booby eyes. Some people like it, some people don't. It's, you know, it's your show, as I would say. You do it how you like. So I've got my tic tac and I've got my little needle mark in the middle, which I'm looking for, and what I want to do is just line that up to get an even turn on the booby. So you're creating a nice even pair of booby eyes. Now you've got a little bit of slack thread, so if there's any bits you want to catch in or tidy up, you can use that as you're bringing your eyes up. Once you've got them on top here, I like to get 3 turns on each side, or 4, whatever you feel safe with. And I'm just going over in a crisscross figure of 8, and I'm going to just put a couple of turns in front. Again, I'm going to open the eyes to make sure that I haven't disturbed my jungle cock cheeks, and that's looking pretty decent so far. Now, I've used jungle cock. I'm aware that it's an expensive feather to buy, so if you don't have jungle cock, think about using goose biots, hot orange goose biots, yellow goose biots, or you can even use a little pinch of Glow Bright floss, which is relatively inexpensive, and you're achieving the same sort of little effect. So don't be put off by the fact that this one's got a bit of jungle cock in. It's not really essential. I'm just using it because I have it. Okay, so next I'm going to come in with my whip finish tool, and I'm going to put a 3-turn whip finish in. Now, when you do this, you've got to pull the eyes back out the way, get your whip finisher in, or use a half hitch if you like, because the next stage, the eyes are going to go nowhere. So what I always do with my boobies is I get a little bit of super glue and I open up the eyes to get to the thread and just dab that super glue in. And if I've got too much on, I just work it round, wobbling the eyes until that glue soaks right into your thread, and that makes these solid. So you've got a solid base there. So far so good. Now, normally I would just put it to the side and I would do this next section once the super glue's dried, but for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to crack on. So I want to put a little hot spot in here, and what I'm going to do is just invert my vise. I've now got the vise inverted, so the first thing I want to do is I've just got it a little bit more tilted towards the camera than I would like, but I want you to see what I'm doing rather than I'm seeing what I'm doing, so I'm doing a lot of guesswork here. But basically I'm going to seal the thread wraps that I've got underneath with some Solaris Bone Dry. Just use the brush. Now, this might seem like an extra stage, but if you don't seal it, what happens is when you apply your hot spot resin, it just sinks into the thread and goes on. And a lot of you may be looking at it thinking, oh, them booby eyes are far too big. The more experienced anglers, that's what you will be thinking, no doubt. But this is an early season fly, and how I would fish it is on a 6 to 7 pound fluorocarbon leader of about 10 foot with a DI7 line. And the Marabou here is going to give me lots of movement, and these huge booby eyes, which some will be saying it's too big, but there is a point to it. When I'm fishing this fly really deep, especially if we've had a cold winter, this ensures loads of little jerky movements while the fly is fishing quite near the bottom of the lake. So I would generally cast out my DI7, count it down to 20-30 seconds, and then a slow figure of 8, and put in a couple of pulls here and there, and always remember to hang. No other flies, no team, single booby, absolutely lethal, and you'll catch a lot of fish if you give that a go. Thanks very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please think about clicking the subscribe button. I would really appreciate your support.